The bank manager tore the single father's complaint into pieces and dropped them into the trash while he stood there holding his little daughter's hand. She told him his problem was not important enough to waste her time on, but what she didn't know was that someone powerful had been watching everything from the other side of the lobby. Within minutes, the same manager who had humiliated him would be standing beside her entire staff, listening as her boss revealed why that exhausted father deserved more respect than anyone in the building. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and treating ordinary people with dignity, please like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Echoes of Kindness. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to people who still believe that one good heart can change someone's entire day. Daniel Carter had learned to live carefully since becoming a single father. Every dollar had a destination. The rent came first, then groceries, then his daughter Lily's school expenses, and whatever remained had to somehow survive until payday. He worked long hours repairing commercial air conditioning systems, often returning home with grease on his hands and exhaustion in his eyes. Lily was 8 years old, bright and gentle, and she had become the reason Daniel never allowed himself to give up. For months, Daniel had been trying to resolve a serious mistake involving his bank account. A payment had been withdrawn twice, leaving him unable to cover his rent on time. He had brought receipts, transaction records, and every document the bank had requested, yet each attempt to fix the problem ended with another promise that someone would look into it. That morning, Daniel entered the Stonebridge National Bank with Lily beside him. He had taken time off work, something he could barely afford, because the situation had become desperate. The lobby was crowded, phones were ringing, employees were moving between desks, and customers waited impatiently. Eventually, Daniel reached the desk of the branch manager, Victoria Hayes, a woman known for her expensive suits and sharp manner. He calmly explained the mistake and handed her his complaint letter. Victoria barely looked at it. She glanced at the papers, frowned, and told him that the bank had more important matters to handle. Daniel tried to explain that he had checked everything twice and that the missing money was needed for his daughter's rent and school expenses. Instead of listening, Victoria accused him of wasting staff time and told him to leave the complaint with customer service. When Daniel asked her to simply read the letter, Victoria's patience disappeared. In front of Lily and several customers, she grabbed the complaint, tore it down the middle, and then tore the pieces again. The sound of paper ripping seemed louder than the noise around them. Lily's eyes widened as pieces of her father's carefully prepared evidence fell onto the counter. Daniel stood frozen, not because he was afraid of Victoria, but because he was trying desperately not to let his daughter see how deeply the humiliation hurt him. He quietly picked up the torn pieces and held Lily's hand. He was about to walk away when a voice from behind him stopped the entire lobby. It belonged to Marcus Bennett, the bank's regional director, who had arrived unexpectedly for an inspection. He had been standing near the entrance for several minutes, watching. Marcus asked Daniel not to leave. Then he looked at the torn complaint and asked what had happened. Daniel explained everything without raising his voice or insulting anyone. He simply told the truth. Marcus listened carefully, then asked for the account records. Within minutes, his team discovered that Daniel's account had indeed been charged twice because of an internal processing error. The money had been sitting in a temporary holding account for weeks while Daniel struggled to pay bills that should never have become his burden. Marcus then turned toward Victoria and asked her to call every employee away from their desks. One by one, the entire staff gathered in the lobby. Customers watched in silence as Marcus stood beside Daniel and Lily. He told the employees that a bank was not built merely from marble floors, computers, and money. It was built on trust. He said that every customer who walked through their doors was carrying a story they could not see, and sometimes the person standing in front of them was fighting a battle much bigger than a financial transaction. Then Marcus did something nobody expected. He asked the entire staff to stand for Daniel. Every employee rose to their feet. Some looked embarrassed. Others lowered their heads. Victoria remained silent, staring at the torn complaint in her hands. Marcus apologized to Daniel on behalf of the bank and ordered the full amount returned immediately, along with the fees that had accumulated because of the error. He also offered to personally oversee the correction and review the branch's customer service practices. But Daniel's response surprised everyone. He didn't demand Victoria's humiliation. He simply asked Marcus to make sure that the next tired parent, elderly customer, struggling worker, or frightened person who came through those doors would be treated with patience. Marcus promised him that he would. As Daniel walked toward the exit with Lily, she looked up at him and smiled. For the first time that morning, Daniel smiled back. He had entered the bank feeling invisible, but he walked out knowing that his dignity mattered. Behind him, Victoria stood quietly beside the staff, realizing that leadership was not about wearing the finest suit or controlling the biggest office. It was about remembering that every person deserved to be heard. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it, and subscribe to Echoes of Kindness. Sometimes your simple support helps a story of compassion reach someone who desperately needs to hear it. And before we end, leave this special comment: everyone deserves to be heard. Let those words remind us that kindness costs nothing, but to someone having the worst day of their life, it can mean everything. Daniel never forgot what happened in that bank. Neither did the employees. And from that day forward, whenever someone walked through those doors carrying a problem, they were no longer treated like a number. They were treated like a human being. Because sometimes, the greatest act of kindness is not giving someone money or solving every problem for them. Sometimes, it is simply standing up and saying, "You matter."